Levi here, the Outdoor Cowboy, and welcome back to the Outdoor Cowboy YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be talking about the 10 most important survival tips and skills for you to survive out in the wilderness. So saddle up for the ride. Our survival tip number 1 is to have a shelter plan. Whether that's something super simple just like this that I made with a tarp and paracord, or a tent, a cabin, or any sort of other shelter. It's important to understand the kind of shelter that you want for your camping. That'll keep you warm, dry, and out of the elements. Those are the main points of what a shelter should be. Your shelter will vary depend on where you're camping, what kind of camping you're doing, and who's with you. Your shelter will be very different if you are on a short trip with your family, or if you're in the Arctic, or if you're doing a super long backpacking trip. Your shelter is going to be different based on you having to carry it, how easy it is to take up and set down, and the kind of insulation that's in it. So those are all things that are important to consider when you're building your shelter. Now let's move on to tip number 2. Our next survival skill is starting a fire, which is one of the most important things you can do. There are many ways that you can start a fire. You can use a lighter, matches, and even other ways like a ferro rod or batteries and steel wool. They're all great options for starting a fire, which can be super important. Fires can help you cook your food, can purify water, can keep you warm, can help you stay dry. So super important that you know how to make one. There can also be helpful things like I made these fire starters. They're cotton balls and Vaseline. Super simple, and they're just great because they burn really well and can help dry out wood and ignite it as well. It's also important to understand fire safety with fire. Fire can definitely be dangerous. It can melt your sleeping bag, it can catch your shelter on fire, it can do all these different things if you're not careful. So it's important to understand where your fire is at. If you build a fire ring like this, can be really helpful for making sure it doesn't spread. Fire will be able to keep your body warm, keep your food warm, and will definitely just make survival and camping a better experience overall. Now let's head to survival skill number 3. Our next survival skill is getting water. A lot of places there won't be ways to get water, so you'll have to pack it in. In those cases, just make sure that you have enough packed because you'll go through water quickly, especially if you're hiking. If you are lucky enough to be in an area where you can collect water either from a stream, a pond, a lake, or even the rainwater, then make sure you filter your water. There's a bunch of different ways you can filter water. Some are like a straw that filter the water as you suck the water through the straw. There's others where you fill up a bag and let gravity push it through a filter into another bag. Or there's some like this, which I love. You take this apart, you fill it up to the fill line, then you put it on the ground, put this guy in, and then you push down. As you push down, it pushes water through the filter into the inner chamber where the water will be clean. Just like that, we went from stream water to nice, clean, filtered water. That's good stuff. Now let's move on to survival skill number 4. Our next survival skill is having and cooking food. Food is obviously super important. We need it to live and function. And a lot of times when you're out surviving, if you're hiking or camping, you're going to be burning a lot of calories. So it's important to have food figured out, whether you bring it with you or you get it while you're out in the wilderness. I love things like this, just freeze-dried stuff, either store-bought or you can do it yourself, or vacuum sealed things that all you need is just boiled water to reheat it and rehydrate it. They're super light, super easy to bring, but there are a ton of great options. The options are really endless on what you can bring, and I hope to show that in my future videos. But canned things can be great because they won't go bad, and other things that don't have expiration dates or need refrigeration can be awesome. Another great thing about being in the outdoors is that we can hunt and fish for our food. So that's not always an option based on where you are or what laws are. But it can be a great thing to get fresh food, to not have to carry your food around, and oftentimes you just need a fire to cook it, maybe some salt and pepper or something to season it, but you should be good. So food's super important. There's so many options, so it'll be up to you on what you can bring, what would be best to bring, because you have to pack it in there and pack the trash out, and have a way to cook everything. So weight comes into play a lot, but also making sure it won't go bad, but I'll give you the nutrients that you need to keep going. Now let's move on to survival tip number 5. Our next survival skill is navigation in the outdoors. It can be huge and can be super important, can even be life-saving. Ideally, it's important to understand where you're going before you go there. If you can know maps and landmarks and different things like that before you go out, it can help you with not getting lost and being able to find your way back. It's also important to be able to understand how to use things like a compass or a map, as well as looking around and finding landmarks. These things can help you to know where you are, to orient yourself, and know the best way to either get out or get back to where you came from. Landmarks are huge because they can help you know which direction you're going and to stay in the same direction. If you can find a mountain range, a peak, or a river, they can help you find your way back. So navigation is super important. Understand where you're going before you go there if possible, and understand how to use the tools that we have that don't take up a lot of space or room that can be life-saving in helping us to know where we are in the outdoors. Now let's move on to survival skill number 6. Our next survival skill is staying warm. This one's super important because if you're not warm, it's going to be a lot harder to have fun on your camping trip. And there's a lot of ways that you can do it. One of the first and biggest ways that you can stay warm is a fire. Even just a simple little fire just like this one can be a great source of warmth and can help you to dry out and stay warm. Another great option that's super cheap are just hand warmers, body warmers, feet warmers. Any of these things just work for super great and they work for a super long time. You can have them on your person, you can throw them in your sleeping bag or in your shelter, and they can be a great easy source of warmth that are super cheap. Another really important thing is just layering up, making sure that you have the right clothes on. You can always take off layers, but you can never add more layers on that you don't have with you. So it's super important that you make sure you have layers and just different options of things that you can wear when you're out in the wilderness, because it'll keep you warm in the daytime while you're hiking and moving around, but also you can layer up at night and it'll keep you warm while you're sleeping. And that goes in our next thing of when we're sleeping, making sure that we have a good sleeping bag. Sleeping bags have temperature ratings on them, which are survival minimums. So that shouldn't be the minimum that we want. We should either get a sleeping bag that's rated for colder than what we are going to be in, or make sure that we're layering or having different things that'll make sure we're warm in our sleeping bag. Another one of my favorite things to do, a little hack, is if you heat up water over a fire, just in a pot or something, and then you have a Nalgene, you can pour the water into your Nalgene, and then you can toss this in your sleeping bag and it'll stay super warm all night. So this is just a great fun little hack that you can do to stay warm. That's super simple. Just get you one of these, heat up some water in a pot over your fire, and you can get it close to boiling, but you want to be careful to not make it too hot. And then just sleep with this, just snuggle up next to it, and it'll keep you nice and warm. There's also some other great things you can do with fire. You can throw coals underground, kind of in your sleeping area, and they'll keep the ground that you're sleeping on super warm, as well as you can warm up rocks in the fire and throw those under where you're sleeping, and they'll keep your sleeping area warm. A bunch of different hacks and things that you can do to make sure you're warm. But I think the biggest thing is just making sure that you're wearing good clothes so that you don't necessarily have to rely on these other things, but they can be great ways to keep you extra warm. So that's our survival skill number 6. Let's move on to survival skill number 7. Our next survival skill or tip is having the right tools. Being equipped with the proper tools can help you with your survival and your comfort when you're out in the wilderness. I'll go through a couple that I have with me and why I feel they're important, and then some other options that you could take as well. The first one, and I think the most important, is having a knife. A knife can do so many different things for you. There's really too many uses of a knife to count, so never leave without a knife. This knife I have right here is one that I forged just out of a leaf spring and made a paracord handle, and then as well I made this leather sheath for it. Another big thing about knives in my experience is having a fixed blade like this can be helpful. Not that a knife like this can't do everything you want it to and can do the same functions, but if this mechanism or anything fails in it, it can ruin your trip. I personally like to have a fixed blade knife like this, and this is my main tool for pretty much everything. The next tool that I pretty much always have with me is a saw. I have this sweet saw that I'll link down below. That folds out like this into a saw, and these blades can be replaced. And having a saw like this is super important. If you're out in the wilderness, there's a lot of times where you'll need to either cut up firewood, which can come from fallen or dead trees. It can also help with building shelters and just doing the big things that a knife necessarily can't cut through. I just really like this one because it has a great shape when it's unfolded, but then it folds up completely flat like this. Another option though, kind of similar, is I have this that's super dirty, but this is a machete on one side and then a saw on the other side. Something like this can get you through a lot of situations and cut most of the things you need. So whatever works for you. Another one that kind of goes with cutting wood and chopping wood, it's just a small hatchet. This is just a basic one, but there's a ton of different survival ones and some of them that are super light, which is super awesome. But stuff like this will be great for getting your kindling and your tinder to be able to create your fire and to really chop down pieces of wood that you've cut down with your saw. There's a bunch of other things that you'll have with you that may or may not be classified as tools. I just wanted to hit on real quick just some sort of fire starter, whether that's a lighter or matches or ferro rod or whatever it may be, whatever you like to carry. These are also great tools. Obviously starting a fire is one of the most important things we can do. to keep us warm, dry, and to help with cooking our food or purifying water, whatever it may be. So I'll count these as tools because they should be with you at all times as well. If there's some other tools you might have with you, some ones I can think of that I've taken with me are survival shovels, like small ones that fold up or pack, whether for helping me dig or for helping me move snow, stuff like that. And then there may be others that you can think of as well that are important. But it's up to you, whatever you need for your camping, wherever you're going, how long you'll be there, making sure you have the right tool for the job. Because it's really important that we use tools for their purposes. Trying to use tools for what they weren't made for is how we can run into a lot of issues with our tools failing and then us not being able to use them. So it's important that we make sure to take care of our tools while we're out there, because oftentimes we don't have a backup or we aren't able to fix it while we're out there. So making sure that it works. And going along with that, with things with blades like our knives or our saws, it's super important to make sure that they're sharp, because a dull knife will not do you a ton of good when you're out in the wilderness. So I have this little hand sharpener that's usually in my backpack just in case. That works great for keeping my stuff sharp. But stuff like saws can be even harder to sharpen, but they're definitely still important. So just to wrap up, making sure that we have the right tools can be vital for our trip. Can help us build our shelter, can help us get food, can help us stay warm, start a fire, all the things that we need to do to be successful while we're out. So making sure we have the right tools and we're taking care of them is super important. So that's survival tip number 7, having the right tools. Let's move on to survival tip number 8. Our next survival tip is pretty simple and kind of overarching, but it's just making sure that you have the right gear for where you're going to be camping. And obviously this can vary a lot based on where you're camping, what season it is, how long you'll be there, but just making sure that you're able to take everything that you need, that you'll be able to use to be successful, to keep you warm, to keep you dry, and to keep you fed. This includes all things like the gear that's on your body, the tools that we just talked about that you have, as well as your backpack. Your backpack is a big one. Making sure that you have a right size backpack to carry all the things you need, making sure that it's waterproof if there's a possibility that your stuff will get wet, and also making sure that it's comfortable. So if you're hiking with it for miles or even multiple days, that it's not creating sores or pain in your back or any other part of your body, to make sure that you can keep going and be comfortable. And kind of going along with that can be your footwear, your gloves, anything that is on your body or part of your camping trip. Just making sure that it's actually suited for what you'll be doing, checking temperature ratings on your sleeping bag, all kinds of things like that to make sure that you're comfortable and that you can survive. So not a ton of specifics, but that's survival tip number 8, just making sure that you have the right gear. Now let's move on to survival tip number 9. Our next survival tip is one that I think is often overlooked, but it's extremely important, and that's first aid. And nighttime cold and flu syrup probably isn't what you're gonna have in your first aid kit, but I just wanted to use it as an example. But first aid can be super important, and it can be anything from a Ziploc bag with a couple Band-Aids in it to a full first aid kit. Stuff like that can literally save your life, and it can save your camping trips. A lot of times in locations where we're remote or if we're cold, little injuries can turn into big problems. So making sure that we have the proper first aid to be ready for anything. We never know when anything's going to happen. That's the thrill of surviving, is we're going out into the unknown and fighting the odds to be able to live out there. And so naturally things are going to happen. Even just little cuts or bruises can be treated very simply. And there's also great stuff like moleskin, which can help with blisters in your boots, or bandages and tape to help with pulled muscles. Really anything like that. Anything that you think you might need, or even if there's a possibility that you'll need it, it's probably better to have it and not need it than not have it and need it. So in my first aid kits when I'm out, usually I just have some Band-Aids, some Neosporin, some sort of wrap or tape, and then I usually have a tourniquet as well, because they're small and light, but they can be life-saving if you get a big cut. So that's what I carry. You can carry whatever you need, but just make sure that you take it into consideration, because it's something that hopefully you don't need, but if you do have it, you definitely want to be prepared. So that's survival tip number 9. Let's move on to our last survival tip, number 10. Our last survival tip is to have backups for things, because things will definitely go wrong. When I'm thinking through what I need to have backups for, I think of just the essentials. So I'll usually have things like 2 knives with me in case one breaks, or 2 different kinds of fire starters in case one of them stops working as well. Having backups doesn't mean that you have to have 2 of everything. Obviously things like your sleeping bag or your backpack, you should be fine only having 1 of, because those things can't really go wrong. But it could be good to have ways to repair those things in case your sleeping bag gets ripped or a strap on your backpack breaks. So there isn't like a hard and fast rule of what you need to have a backup for, but just go through and think about things that could break. If they break and you can live without them, then you don't need a backup. But if they're pretty vital, like a knife or a fire starter, then it's probably a good idea to have a backup. And this doesn't mean that you have to have anything fancy for the backup. If one lighter runs out of gas, you can just have another lighter. or even just a small backup knife or multi-tool will work in place of your main knife. So anything like that will work great. Just making sure that you have backup so when things go wrong in the outdoors, you'll be prepared and you'll still be able to survive like a pro. So that's our last survival tip, and that wraps up our list of our 10 most important survival tips and skills that I've learned in my experience to help you survive, to have an enjoyable camping trip, and to be able to survive in the outdoors. I hope that you're able to feel like you learned some stuff and you're able to follow along to make sure that you're packed and that you're prepared for when your next adventure. And I hope that you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one. If you like this video, make sure to check out the Outdoor Cowboy YouTube channel. We've got new videos every week, survival adventures, camping projects, tool restorations, and a whole bunch more. Hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.